If you saw that 39,000 people signed up for the June LSAT and your first thought was, we're cooked, I get it. I mean, that is a huge number, one of the biggest LSATs we've seen in years, almost double the number of people who took it in April. And so every Reddit thread, every Discord, every prep group right now is saying the same thing, that scores are going to explode, the curve's going to break, the cycle's already over. I want you to take a breath because that reaction right there is what costs people points. Panic can push you to make decisions based out of fear instead of strategy. And the people who stay calm through this are going to walk into a way smaller, way less competitive next cycle with more leverage than serious applicants have seen in years. Now, I've been teaching the LSAT for 20 years now. I was coaching the LSAT when Logic Games came off the test in 2024, when they rolled out remote testing in 2020, when the test went digital in 2019. And every time something big shifts, the same pattern plays out. People panic, they make bad decisions under pressure, and the ones who keep their heads screwed on straight come out ahead. So I want to walk you through what's actually happening with the upcoming June LSAT. There are 5 things people are panicking about right now. Some of them are pure noise, some are real, and I want you to be able to tell which is which. So you should know first and foremost that this is the last fully remote LSAT after June. The LSAT goes back to in-person testing for almost everybody. LSAC will still allow some remote testing for people who have documented needs, but we don't really know yet how strict the bar is going to be. And so for a lot of test takers, June will be the last shot at taking the LSAT from home, the last chance to take it at your own desk rather than going to a Prometric testing center, sitting next to strangers and hoping nothing goes wrong. So a lot of people are scrambling to grab the last remote LSAT slot. Some have been studying for months and were planning to take it in June anyway. Fine, but a huge chunk aren't actually ready for the June LSAT, and so they're treating this like a deadline they've got to beat instead of a goal they're prepared for. And they're signing up basically out of FOMO, not because they're really hitting their target. Now, when Logic Games came off the LSAT back in 2024, it made a lot of people think the LSAT got easier, and that's not necessarily true. It actually got harder in some ways. Logical reasoning and reading comp are the entire test now. There's no section you can just diagram your way through. For every section, you've got to have careful reading and be able to track arguments well. And so the people who signed up thinking the new LSAT is easier are about to find out otherwise. Now, there are a lot of LSAT score holds from people who took it in November and January. It spooked a lot of people into wanting one more shot at the LSAT before things get worse. And so all of this is combining into one larger LSAT registration number. But none of it means that the average test taker is suddenly stronger at logical reasoning than they were 6 months ago. The first big thing you got to think about is, does 39,000 registrants really mean there's more competition? You got to consider that registration is not the same thing as those who will actually test. Every LSAT loses between 15 to 25% of registrants between sign-up and test day. I've seen this through every single LSAT administration I've been teaching for over the past 20 years. And so that 39,000 number will probably drop down to maybe around 30,000 actually showing up, maybe less. We call this melt in the industry. People will withdraw from the LSAT when their practice scores stop going up. They push it back to August once they realize they're not ready. Some people no-show on test day. Some register early as a placeholder, and then some sign up impulsively and never really study, so they have to push it back. Now, the people most likely to melt and drop off are not the ones scoring 170 plus on their practice tests. It's the ones who are scoring well below their goal. Those who are testing well, testing strong, they tend to keep their dates. Anxious test takers don't. So look at November and January as precedents. Both had really big registration spikes that turned into much smaller actual testing numbers. The high scores stayed on, they held steady, but everybody else dropped out at much higher rates. But the headline number you got to know is the ceiling. The real number is a lot smaller. And the part of that real number actually competing for top scores is smaller still. The other thing you got to remember is that the LSAT is not curved against those taking it on your specific LSAT test date. If you score at a 170 level, you get a 170. Doesn't matter if 5,000 people took the LSAT that day or if 50,000 took it that day. Doesn't matter if everybody did better or worse than usual. Your score is based on your raw performance adjusted for the difficulty of the LSAT test form that you saw. There is no curve against the people who happened to take it that morning. And people miss this constantly. They assume more people taking it means a harder cutoff, but that's not how scaled scoring works. The scale is set against the difficulty of the question, not the performance of that day's testers. And there have been bigger LSATs in the past. The October 2009 LSAT had over 60,000 testers, 60,000, which is way more than June 2026 is going to see even at registration. And even within the virtual era over the past 6-7 years, this is not unprecedented. The June 2021 LSAT had over 42,000 registrations during the pandemic, bigger than this coming June. And the world didn't end. People who took it in 2021 still got into law school. People who took it in 2009 still got into law school. The world didn't collapse. Now, the reason the June LSAT feels different is that LSAT didn't run as many tests back in 2009. Back then, they only offered the LSAT 4 times a year. Now they have it 8 times a year. And so the same yearly testing volume gets spread thinner across more dates, which makes any given LSAT administration look smaller in isolation. Until you get a big one, everybody freaks out. And so this 39,000 number is big, but it's not a catastrophic doomsday number. The second thing people are worrying about is LSAT score inflation. We will probably see some score inflation, it's true, from the June LSAT because of who's taking it. There are a lot of repeat testers trying to push their scores up. This might be the strongest cohort of repeat testers we've seen in years, all converging on one administration, maybe because it is the last remote LSAT. So there will be more 170s and 175s than usual. The scores at the top of the curve will get compressed a little bit, but what law schools always care about is their reported medians. They want their numbers to look good for US News. And so if your school's median is a 165 and you score 169, you're a number that helps them. Doesn't matter when you took it. And you're not getting compared to all the other people who took it that day. You're getting compared to other people applying to that specific school for that specific seat in that specific cycle. And if the medians at top schools rise because more people are scoring high, those schools fight harder for high scores. They're not going to fight less hard because they need them more to defend their numbers. Scholarship numbers go to people who help them maintain their stats. So the value of a strong score actually goes up even more when the medians rise. Now, what you've got to avoid is being stuck right at the median because that's where the competition is. That's where applicants get treated as being interchangeable. Most of the panic about a crowded cycle comes from people sitting at the median. So if you're aiming for a 160 at a 160 median school, yeah, the volume's going to feel scary because then you're going to be competing on the softs. Your resume, your application essays, your personal statement, letters of rec, where you went to undergrad, anything that can break the tie. But if you can push your score to 165 plus, 170 or so, you are then significantly above the line where schools are going to fight for you. So take, for example, a top 14 law school with a 173 LSAT median. If you apply with a 173, you might get in with a smaller scholarship, maybe $10,000 or $15,000. You apply with a 170 and you're below the bar for that school. Then you're just fighting just to get accepted and no scholarship money for you. But if you apply with a 176, 3 points above their median, then schools start giving you money. We're talking $60, $90, maybe $120,000 in scholarship money over the course of 3 years. So the same applicant, same softs, same essays, but a different LSAT score by 6 points, the financial difference could be 6 figures. So that is not just study a little bit harder, it's you could pick a different career path because of being able to graduate without debt. So in a busier cycle, in a more competitive cycle, the gap grows. When people are nervous about defending their medians, the schools are going to pay more for the scores that protect them. And so when you hear somebody panicking about the June LSAT inflating scores, ask which side of the inflation you're on. If you're a high scorer, this works in your favor. If you're a median scorer, the answer is not to hope that fewer people apply. The answer is to raise your score and retake it to get above the median of your target school. And I know this will upset some people, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you've been studying for 6 months and you're still at the median for your target school, the LSAT is not your real problem. Your prep approach is your real problem. And waiting for a less competitive cycle is not going to fix that. You're either going to do the work to get above the median, or you're going to keep losing scholarship money every cycle. Waiting for an easier cycle is not going to save you because the scores just keep inflating. Now, a lot of folks are thinking they've got to sign up now or cram right now, do or die, this is it. But while the LSAT as a whole is incredibly important, no one particular LSAT test date is going to make or break you. You can always retake it. The LSAT's offered 8 times a year beyond June. We've got August, September, October, November. You could theoretically even take the LSAT in January or February and still apply this coming cycle. I don't think you need to wait that long, of course. It's better to apply earlier if you can. I think if you're starting now, you could probably knock it out in August or September at the latest. But the LSAT's not something that you cram for. It's not a test of memorization, it's pattern recognition. The LSAT punishes rushing, it rewards depth. The students I've seen take 30 practice tests over 4 months and improve by 2 points, they're not going about it the right way. But if you take 10 practice tests over 4 months with brutally honest review, you can improve 15, 20 points. It's about depth, and that takes time. If you're not currently signed up for the June LSAT and you're thinking about jumping into it, don't do it. Go for August or September. A bad LSAT score will follow you for years. It will dictate the rest of your career. It's not worth it. Taking it in person is not the end of the world. Even if you got to do it in person in August or September or beyond, that's totally fine. So stay calm. Use the next few weeks or the next few months to do deep, slow, painful review on the questions that you keep missing. And that's going to be the biggest way that you can boost up your score whenever you're taking the LSAT. Better to take the LSAT a couple months later and apply with a higher score than take it earlier when you're not really ready and apply with a lower score. Ultimately, if you take it in June or August or September, you're still applying right when applications open in September, when it's easier to get in, and there's also more scholarship money available. And whenever you're taking it, I'm happy to help you out. I'm offering free LSAT tutoring for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that free tutoring lesson with me personally is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. That is an open offer for everybody watching this now or later. I'm also offering a free easy LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. No strings attached, no obligation. The free cheat sheet is linked below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. For those watching on TikTok, I'm putting the link in the chat, and I'm also displaying it on screen just so that you can see what it looks like. Again, totally free, covering everything, logical reasoning and reading comprehension. No obligations. I know there are some folks out there who are selling PDFs. I don't think we need to charge for PDFs. I'm just happy to give it away for anyone who's looking for support with their prep, covering everything logical reasoning and reading comp. And of course, if you want to talk through anything LSAT and law school admissions, you can book the free tutoring with me for a more personalized, in-depth deep dive. I'm happy to stick around and answer any and all questions, anything at all, LSAT and law school admissions. In the meantime, in the context that I can here during the live. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat, anything at all. I'll get to as many as I can. Yeah, Sean Angel, if you got questions, feel free to drop them in. User 6922 is asking, how is the bar in comparison to the LSAT? Any law students or law school graduates here who want to comment on that? The bar is probably harder. So if you think the LSAT's bad, wait till you see the bar exam. In a way, like the studying for the LSAT is preparation for law school, which is preparation for the bar. And so the skills that you're building now through your LSAT prep will support you into law school and beyond, evaluating arguments, navigating difficult, dense text, reading for structure, not for details. You're cultivating the skills that will serve you well in the rest of your career. But first and foremost, knock out the LSAT, use your LSAT score to get into a better law school, get more scholarship money, and get into a law school that has good bar passage rates. For those who aren't aware, not every law school is equally successful when it comes to preparing its students to pass the bar exam on their first attempt. And so you can look up which law schools have better outcomes than others, both with regard to bar passage rates as well as employment outcomes. And so if you want to look at which law schools are relatively more successful at this, you can search any given law school's American Bar Association 509 report. The law schools are mandated, they are required to share their success in terms of getting their students employment, getting them jobs that require a JD, and also getting them to pass the bar exam on the first attempt. And some law schools give you more bar exam prep support than others. Citrus asks, does GPA matter if your LSAT is high? The numbers matter. Both the GPA and the LSAT matter. The good news is that your LSAT matters more. So if you look at the Law School Admissions Index, which is the formula that law schools use to calculate your chances, for lack of a better word, they weigh your LSAT score more heavily than your undergraduate GPA. So your GPA matters, but your LSAT matters more. So if you're worried that your GPA from undergrad is not what you would have liked it to be, if you didn't do well, especially freshman year, you dropped a class or flunked a class for whatever reason, you can offset a lower GPA with a higher LSAT. Law schools tend to discount GPA anyway because grade inflation, frankly speaking, is out of control, and some majors and some undergrads are more prone to inflating grades than others. So, for example, if you go to an elite university for undergrad and majored in the humanities, you're going to have a higher GPA than other folks on average, than those who went to a state school or those who majored in STEM. Law schools know this. The sad, unfortunate fact is that the U.S. News rankings and the ABA don't distinguish between different undergrads and different majors when considering GPA. And so it would not be a terrible idea, if you wanted to be ruthless about getting the best GPA, to choose a humanities major where you can get an easy A. I hate saying that. I wish it weren't the case, but purely speaking, for law school admissions, that is basically how it works. So the incentives are there. But if you're already late in undergrad, or you're done with undergrad and GPA is pretty much a done deal, get a higher LSAT score to compensate. If you are still in undergrad, what some folks will do is they will go to take a community college class on the side, get an A+ to boost their grades. So you might want to do that over the summer. Tyler So Real saying, I am the person who has gone to an elite school and double majored in the humanities. Will it hurt me? I'm going to graduate sumo. You're definitely right. It's inflated. Yeah, it is inflated, but it's not going to hurt you. If anything, it's going to help you. I mean, if you have a 4.0, doesn't matter how you got it, a 4.0 is a 4.0. And that's going to help you in admissions. It may not be fair. Others in the chat, your friends who majored in STEM, might be hating on you for this, but if you have a 4.0, that's going to benefit you in admissions. And the person who majored in STEM should probably take some easy community college classes in the humanities to boost up their GPA if they're still in undergrad. Alayla is saying, or Alaya, sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, I have a low undergrad GPA, but I went to grad school and had a high GPA there. How do I approach this? Well, the sad truth is that only undergrad GPA matters for law school admissions. Grad school GPA doesn't matter. It's not factored into the calculation, so that's more like a soft, meaning it's not factored into that formula I was talking about earlier. And so it's not going to help you to have a high grad GPA. They'll see it for context, but basically, I would venture to say that most folks who went to grad school have a higher GPA from grad school than undergrad. Anyone who's an exception to that, feel free to comment. But in my experience, the grad school GPAs tend to be higher. But because not everybody has a grad school GPA, law schools just don't use it. The ABA doesn't use it. US News doesn't use it. And so you have the disadvantage of a low undergraduate GPA. It is what it is. Good news is LSAT matters more anyway. It's 1 day, 2.5 hours, weighs more heavily than all of your undergrad combined. So at this point, the undergrad GPA is a done deal. Just focus on getting a higher LSAT score. If you've already taken it, you can retake it. It's fine. Law schools do not average multiple LSAT scores. They only take into consideration the highest LSAT score on your records. Mystery Girl says, hi, Steve. Do you recommend to apply when you have the highest LSAT possible? Yes, I do. Technically speaking, that would mean when you have a 180. And yeah, I'd say if you have a 180, time to go ahead and apply before it expires. LSAT scores are good for 5 years, by the way. But basically, when you have achieved the highest LSAT score you think that you can reasonably achieve, that is the time to hit submit on your application, assuming that you've gotten your application essays together and such. And you could take the LSAT 5 times in 5 years. You could take it 7 times for life. So the retake limits are pretty loose. meaning they basically allow and incentivize retaking. The LSAT's offered 8 times a year, and speaking now in late April, you could still take the LSAT in June, August, September, October, and November. Any of those test dates or all of those test dates, if you wanted to theoretically, not saying you should do all of those. I don't recommend taking the LSAT on a whim or without proper studying. But if you think you could do better on a retake, keep in mind that all you've got to do is take another practice test a week, review your mistakes in depth, and that could be sufficient for retake prep. Of course, you want to have a proper study plan. You want to use quality resources. You want to use real official LSAT practice tests. You want to get some feedback on what you're getting wrong and why. Don't just take practice tests and after test without properly reviewing. You want to have a proper strategy in mind, and that's where we come in, of course. At LSAT Unplugged, we offer comprehensive custom LSAT coaching programs personalized to you. We look at your current starting point, your goal LSAT score, your time frame, and then we map out an action plan to get you from your current point to your goal score in that time frame. If you're taking the LSAT in June, for example, in roughly 5-6 weeks, we're going to take a more intensive boot camp style approach, maybe with live coaching 6-7 days a week, because we want to maximize your score. We do ask a lot of our students, and that's how we get the results that we get. If you want to take a more slow and steady approach, maybe you want to go to take the LSAT in August or September or October, totally fine, of course. Then we'll take a more slow and steady. Maybe in that case, you'll be doing LSAT coaching once or twice a week. We always plan your study schedule around your other obligations, whether you're working, you're in school, family obligations, what have you. If you want to talk through what your LSAT study plan could look like, I'm happy to help you out. I'm offering free LSAT tutoring for everybody watching this now or later. You can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me personally at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and Instagram as well. That is an open offer for everybody watching this now and later, by the way. I'm also offering a free easy LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. The link to get that free cheat sheet's in my bio as well, below the video as well. Victor asks, thinking about going into the legal side of things, do you know much about the aerospace industry? Currently a contracts administrator in the aerospace industry with a business degree. So honestly speaking, I know virtually nothing about the aerospace industry other than following the Artemis thing recently, what SpaceX is up to, cool stuff. There are a lot of folks who do not have STEM backgrounds going into law. And so if you have any, and I mean any, even tangential relationship to the STEM field, law schools will love you because you are more employable than the average law school applicant, the average law school graduate. And one of the ways in which law schools are evaluated is based on the employment of their graduates after finishing law school. And so if you can highlight a STEM-related field in your application essays and your resumes, law schools are going to love to see it, and that may help you get accepted. So I would definitely cover that in your application. And of course, you're working on contracts currently. That's what lawyers do as well. And so you could probably have the makings of a pretty interesting application essay, and I would recommend covering that on your application. Ronnie says, I'm a fourth-year student, so I'm guessing you're a senior in college, considering going into law, been practicing for the LSAT, scoring well. Do you think it's a good idea for me to pursue law? Fourth-year dental student. Okay, cool. So I can't personally advise you on whether it's a good idea for you to pursue law or not. Doing well on the LSAT is, I would argue, necessary to go to law school, but not sufficient to go to law school. What you're asking about is more of a career advice sort of thing, which is beyond what I could advise you on the very limited couple of TikTok comments that you've dropped here. What I would recommend is talk to lawyers practicing in the area that you want to practice in. LinkedIn is your friend here. Career services at your university is also your friend. I would talk to them and see what they have to say. And think about, well, your fourth year dental, you haven't finished dental school yet, but I'm guessing that you're decently far along, yet you are considering a career change. So my question is, why not pursue dentistry? If you're this far along, did you change your mind about it? Did you get cold feet on it? And to a certain extent, the grass is always greener, right? Every field's got its own drawbacks, I'll say. But talk to attorneys in your area, see your area that you're interested in, see what they have to say about it. And also, the LSAT's not going anywhere. You could take the LSAT and keep in mind that your score is good for 5 years, so you could always hold off on actually applying until you get a more concrete sense of what you actually want to do. Ava says, I'm a sophomore and plan to take the LSAT in April of 2027. When and how should I start? Okay, so you've got about a year to take the LSAT. That's awesome. I wish that more folks planned ahead. First thing I would do is take a cold practice test. You can take one for free on the LSAC Law Hub platform. They give you 4 practice tests for free in the actual LSAT format. Don't use it as an indication of your potential. Just use it as a benchmark from which to measure your later future progress. You then want to take a slow and steady approach, working through the fundamentals, the foundation, the different LSAT sections, the different LSAT question types. In logical reasoning, you've got 15 different types of questions that ask you to do different things related to an argument. For example, strengthen, weaken, flaw, parallel, necessary assumption, sufficient assumption, resolve the paradox, and so on. You've also got reading comp to work on. That's a whole third of the test. And then there's pacing and time management, doing individual sections, and full-length exams to build up your endurance. But with a longer time frame like what you have, taking a more slow and steady approach, building the foundation first is the way to go. Then down the line, you could take more individual timed sections to work on how you're allocating time over the course of the section, and then finally pull it all together with full-length timed practice tests. You get approximately 60 practice tests in the official LSAT format on the Law Hub platform. I would work through those as well as the drill sets and individual sections in Law Hub, save the newest exams for closer to test day. And I'm painting it with a broad brush here what your study plan could look like if you want to talk it through on a more personal level based on weekdays versus weekends or holidays and vacations and such versus during the academic year. You can, of course, reach out to me. I'm happy to help you out. You can get the free cheat sheet linked in my bio. You can also book the free LSAT tutoring lesson with me as well. Also linked in my bio. Happy to talk you through the particulars. 306 asks, do you think splitters are cooked going forward? It seems like a 175 isn't enough with a 3.2 GPA. Not necessarily. I mean, it depends on where you want to go to law school. If you've got a 175, even if your GPA is low, you can still get into a great law school. It's possible, of course, that with a low enough GPA, even a 175 plus LSAT's not going to make up for it at a top 14 law school maybe, but there's still plenty of top 30 law schools you would have a good shot at. And softs do play some role. It's not like they play no role at all. But a higher LSAT can do a lot to offset a lower GPA, especially since law schools weigh your LSAT score more heavily than your undergrad GPA anyway. But my question to you would be, do you have a 175 or is this more like a theoretical 175? Let's get you the actual 175 first before catastrophizing, and then you'll see where you can actually get in. But the energy that you put into worrying would be better directed to actually getting the score. That's what I'm saying is all. And I know that, of course, GPAs are inflated. LSAT scores are also inflated these days. The numbers are only getting higher, and you got to fight fire with fire and just get a higher score to compensate. Sean's asking, do law schools care if you graduate from a community college with a 170 plus LSAT score? Great question. So law schools do not really care about the prestige of your undergrad. They care about the numbers, the LSAT and the GPA. And so I think it's actually a pretty prudent course of action. It's financially wise for anyone who is in high school watching this. I know we get some high schoolers here and there every now and then. To go to a cheaper undergrad, save some money. Because ultimately, when you are an attorney, no one's going to care where you went to college. They're going to care where you went to law school. And so if you can go to a state school for undergrad, pay in-state tuition, pay public tuition, you could save tens of thousands of dollars that you could put towards law school or just put into your savings so that you're not financially strapped when you graduate law school. So yeah, if you can get the 170 plus, they're not really going to care that much about where you went to undergrad. Sarah says, I'm legit struggling. Sorry to hear it. I mean, what are you struggling with? I'm guessing the LSAT? Tell me more about your LSAT situation. I'll do what I can to help. Got a question from Axum asking, how much do law schools value work experience? Is applying straight out of undergrad a big disadvantage? I'll say this. I mean, they do like to see work experience, like I mentioned earlier. Part of how law schools are evaluated is based on the employment of their graduates. So if you're the kind of person who's gotten a full-time job before, that is a good predictor of your being able to get a full-time job. I mean, one thing that LSAT and GPA do not predict that well is how you perform on interviews, for example, your people skills, right? They're not considering your resume in the numbers. And so having work experience is going to help a lot. And if you're like our earlier commenter who did contracts in the aerospace industry, that's great legal work right there, relevant to what you'll do as an attorney. And so if you have the work experience, definitely showcase it. But consider that when you're applying right out of undergrad, you're saving some time. I mean, there is an opportunity cost to not going to law school. Every year, every gap year is another year that you could have been working as an attorney. So in other words, a gap year as a paralegal or a gap year as an intern, you're making way less than you would as an attorney. And so the sooner you can go to law school and graduate, the more you're going to be making on the other end. So trade-offs, no easy answers. Kitty asks, are we hiring? Yes, we are. So Kitty says, are you hiring LSAT tutors, incoming 1L UPenn Merit Scholar? Yeah, so we're always hiring. If you have scored a 175 or higher on your own official LSAT, if you have teaching and tutoring experience, if you're passionate about helping others succeed on it, we're always hiring. You can DM me on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or email me at help@lsatunplugged.com. Always happy to consider applicants. We're always hiring. Chunky Peaches asks, great username there. What is the most ideal amount of points you can increase within 5 to 6 months? I have a 140 at the moment. I mean, anything's possible. 5, 6 months, we're speaking now in late April. So I'm guessing you're taking the LSAT in October or November. I mean, you could hit 170 plus. Not saying it's easy. No promises or guarantees. Your results may vary, but we have seen our students improve 30 points or more over that time frame. Ultimately, your improvement on the LSAT is a function of the amount that you study and the way in which you study. So how many hours can you put in per day and per week? And then what is the nature of the studying that you're doing? A lot of folks will fall into the trap of taking practice test after practice test. They're happy or sad about their results. Then they do the same thing all over again without reviewing in depth. If you don't get to the root cause of what you're getting wrong and why, you may just end up making the same mistake again. And so at LSAT Unplugged, we use a framework called the Socratic review method. It's the cornerstone of our LSAT courses and coaching programs, idea being we're not going to be there on test day. We can't take the LSAT for you, right? So we've got to give you the confidence, the clarity, and the skill to perform when it truly matters. And so we ask you a series of guiding questions live in the coaching, and you can also adopt this same process for your own self-studying. For example, when you're looking at an argument, was it your approach to the question that was off, or was it the text of the question that threw you off? Was it a tempting wrong answer choice, or was it an unappealing right answer choice? Because if we can get down to the root cause of what you're getting wrong and why you're getting it wrong, then we can help you avoid making the same mistake again. But just drilling LSAT questions by type is not going to get you there because LSAT test day is not a drill. It's not enough to get the questions right. You've got to get them right under test day conditions, considering pacing and time management and endurance. And so if you're worried that you're not studying efficiently, if you're just drilling questions or you're just using practice tests or you're just reading LSAT for dummies, please toss it, burn it, give it to your worst enemy. We've got to look at your review process, look at how you are approaching the questions. Yes, Carl, I'm talking about those actual official LSAT practice questions. And so if you want some feedback on your study plan, now or later, anyone watching this, for those just joining, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me personally. I'll take a look at your current approach, give you some pointers, help you find a more efficient method. You can book that free LSAT tutoring lesson with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. Link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. I'm also offering a free easy LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. You can get your free LSAT cheat sheet at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. Link is below the video and pinned in the chat as well, covering everything logical reasoning and reading comprehension if you want to grab a copy. Pearl is asking, if you have a low GPA but a high LSAT score, can you make it into a top tier law school? The answer would be maybe. I mean, define low GPA, define high LSAT score. The top 14 law school LSAT medians all range from 170 to 174. The GPA medians are all around a 3.9. And so the question would be, how do your numbers stack up to those? The lower you are below the 3.9 GPA, the higher you want to be above the 174 LSAT to compensate. A high LSAT can offset a low GPA, but if your GPA is a 2.5, it's possible that there is no LSAT score high enough that would compensate for that. Most folks aren't in that position, though. If your GPA is a little bit below a 3.9, let's say it's a 3.7 or a 3.6 or maybe a 3.5, if you could get sufficiently above a 175, you could still be in the running for a T14 law school. I don't make promises or guarantees, though. Ultimately, I'm not the one making the admissions decisions. I'd be terrible at admissions because I would just want to take all of you. But with limited seats to maintain their prestige, they've got to make some tough calls. Carl's asking, do you believe majoring in economics may help employability after law school? Yeah, I do think it could. Basically, you want to be unique in a good way. So for every pre-law major, poli-sci major, criminal justice major, and I say this as someone who was a poli-sci major myself, I mean, they love seeing folks who are in anything more closely related to STEM or, for lack of a better phrase, left-brained kind of work that is less subject to grade inflation, anything that is more rigorous, anything that is more brutally curved. The downside, though, is that the STEM fields have less grade inflation, and so your GPA may take a hit for majoring in those areas. And so you want to think to yourself, do I want to be in a more cliche major that's more stereotypical, but will also make it easier for me to get a high GPA? Sadly, I think that probably just taking the easier A majors, easier A classes will probably be the better path. But you may say to yourself, you know what? I want to keep my options open after graduating. I'm not 100% sure that law school is what I want to do, so I'm not going to choose my major just based on what I think will look good for law school. I want to choose a major based on what I might want to do with my career and keep it more open-ended. Dollar signs asking, if you had a low GPA like a 2.7, but could get into the 165, 170 LSAT range, would that get you in anywhere? Yeah, I do think it would get you in somewhere, but a 2.7 GPA will weigh your admissions odds down quite a bit. And so I'd want you to get more into the 170, 175 plus range just to compensate, because the 2.7 GPA will function like a little bit of a red flag. Of course, you can explain it away to some extent in an addendum, meaning you could talk about what were the circumstances around your undergrad classes that led you to get that lower GPA, but you want a sufficiently high LSAT to compensate. So I would push for the 170, 175 plus to balance it out and mitigate any concerns they might have. You never want to leave admissions with any open questions. You want to resolve any concerns they might have. Javier is asking, how much would being fluent in Mandarin as someone who is white help me for law school or post-law school employment? I've been taking it for 5 years in high school and now 1 year in college plus 3 years more. Okay, cool. I mean, that's definitely unique, worth mentioning on your resume at the very least. If you've spent time in China, if you've done any internships that are related to business with China, that might help more. In other words, I'm saying, can we bring the Mandarin fluency out of a solely academic context and bring into more of a real world context to help admissions see more clearly what the trajectory of your career might look like? In other words, what might you do with that Mandarin fluency? But short answer, yes, it could certainly help with employment. And one question that law schools are asking is, how employable is this person? So it will help. I gather that you're finishing up freshman year of college just based on what you shared. So you've still got a lot of time ahead of you. I don't want you to over-index on the Mandarin either. I mean, that's a nice soft, but it still is a soft factor, meaning we want to focus more on GPA and LSAT score. Maintain a high GPA in undergrad, keep the grades up, also earn that high LSAT score to maximize your odds. That's where I want you to focus your attention. Scanning through for more questions here. Vicky's asking, if I'm already self-employed as a business consultant for 15 years, going to take the August LSAT, but my question is, will I only go to law school to be able to offer current client-based law services? How will the school affect my employment after law school when I will just be still self-employed? Okay, so basically, I gather what you're saying is you're taking the August LSAT, you're a business consultant, you're planning to continue to offer your legal services basically solo, as a solo practitioner, opening your own shingle. You don't need to be hired by a firm. I mean, you'll still count as employed. I don't think you need to worry about that if that's your concern. Let the law schools worry about how to categorize you. You focus on your career. Just scanning through for more questions here, folks. Feel free to keep them coming. Carl's asking, is LawHub the best resource to practice the LSAT? Yes, it is. And so for those who aren't aware, the LSAC, the Law School Admission Council, offers every previously administered LSAT practice test on their LawHub platform. You get 4 of them for free. You get the others with a LawHub Advantage subscription. And the LawHub software on the Law School Admission Council website is the only place that you can practice the LSAT questions in the exact format they're going to appear on LSAT test day. So when you use some unofficial third-party platform where the look and feel of the functionality is different, you're not familiarizing yourself with the software that you're going to have on test day. And that's often one reason why student scores drop 5 to 8 points from the practice test to the actual exam, because they haven't properly simulated test day conditions. And so for that reason, I don't recommend studying out of books. I don't recommend using unofficial platforms to take your practice test, because then you're not used to the look and feel of test day, the highlighting tool, the underlining tool, the countdown timer, the flagging function, all of that will look and feel different. And LSAC is once again changing the software on the LSAT. For those taking the LSAT in August or beyond, the software is going to look different. They're changing the user interface as part of their attempt to eliminate cheating on the LSAT. That's also the reason why they're going back to administering the LSAT in person only. So if you're ready to get serious about the LSAT, if you're taking the LSAT anytime this year, I do recommend taking the LSAT for all your practice tests in the LawHub platform. You get 4 practice tests for free, the others with your subscription, but well worth it, of course. They do not come with explanations, and there's no one you could talk to get feedback on what you're getting wrong and why. And so if you want to talk through what your LSAT study plan could look like, happy to help you out. You can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and Instagram as well. That is an open offer for everybody watching this now and later. Happy to help you out. Sean is asking, how can you cheat on the LSAT? I took it in April and there was no way to cheat. Well, for security reasons, I'm not going to disclose exactly how to cheat on the LSAT. We don't want to get shut down, and I certainly don't want to facilitate cheating, but there are ways. I'll say that. There were some organized cheating rings that were basically facilitating proxy test takers. So you would be able to hire someone else to take it under your name. They would also install software on your computer to capture the exam content so they could share it with others who had not yet taken those exams. In a glaring, how should I put this? I think it was unwise for LSAC to reuse the same LSAT questions over and over. Basically, they would administer unreleased LSAT questions on one exam date and then reuse them on several other exam dates. And so imagine they used some questions on the January LSAT, then they reused them in February and used them again in April. but someone screenshotted those questions in January, so those who took it in February would be able to see those questions and study for them. Reuse them again in April, same thing, people could study them in advance. So these questions were circulating around and people could study them in advance. I'm not going to say exactly how it was done, even I don't know all the details of it, but suffice to say, it was serious enough and widespread enough that LSAC said, you know what, this is compromising the integrity of the exam. And so for that reason, they want to make it significantly harder. They want to shut down those pathways by adopting new software, that's the new user interface, and also shutting down remote testing so that if you're taking it only in person at a parametric testing center, not on your own computer, you can't install software that would capture the questions. And I think that this is part of what has contributed to the rising LSAT scores, all the LSAT score inflation. I don't think that most of the high scores are solely due to the cheating, but that is part of what contributed to easing the cheating. I think a bigger factor in the high scores is the fact that the LSAT is offered more frequently, so folks can retake it a lot, and only the highest score counts. That leads to a general upward trend. Additionally, the rise in LSAT accommodations has made it easier for people to get high scores because it reduces the effect of the severe time constraint under which you take the exam. I mean, if you have double time or triple time, it's easier to get a higher score, and I think that's been contributing as well. Pearl says, cheating on the LSAT is crazy because you'll fail when you go to law school. That's a good point, right? I mean, are you going to cheat your way throughout your entire legal career? If you cheat on the LSAT, you get into a law school that you're not really equipped to succeed in. How are you going to do on your law school exams? How are you going to do on the bar exam? So in a way, you might end up just putting yourself in a pretty tight spot. Yeah, it becomes a sort of a vicious cycle that I'm not sure it's easy to extricate yourself from. It's a good point. Malik says, on the same practice test, I find that my logical reasoning section scores vary vastly from -9 to -5. Okay, so to some degree, fluctuation is normal, even within a single LSAT practice test. The two logical reasoning sections are not meant to be equal in difficulty. One will always be harder than the other. Another factor that might play a role here is that either your earlier section is better because you're more fresh and your later section goes worse because you're more fatigued, your endurance is running out, or on the flip side, maybe your first section is worse because you need time to get warmed up, your second section goes better because you are then warmed up. And so depending on what your situation might be, if you find a trend here, if your fourth section of the exam is always worse because you're tired, then you want to work on your endurance, taking more full-length timed practice tests. And maybe, every once in a while, you want to do a 5-section exam so that 4 sections seems easier, relatively speaking, by comparison. I'm not saying that you should always take 5-section exams, of course. That's to be used only once in a while, just to push your limits just a little bit, but could be useful to employ. On the flip side, if you need time to get warmed up, maybe you do a couple of warm-up questions before you start your official LSAT, just to get your brain juices flowing. Just a couple questions, though, not a full section. You don't want to push your endurance too hard, but it could be useful to do a few questions before the actual exam so that the first questions you're doing are not the ones that truly count. Armand says, I took a cold practice test, got a 155. Is that good? Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad starting point. I mean, I personally started off at a 152, ended up at a 175. Took me an entire year, though, and at least half of that was a total waste of time. If I'd done it properly, I probably could have knocked it out in just a couple of months because the LSAT's all about pattern recognition. And so your cold diagnostic should not be taken as indicative of your potential or how you're ultimately going to do. Just tells you that you haven't learned the language of the LSAT yet, but you can improve significantly from wherever you're starting, whether it's a 155 or a 145 or a 125 or a 120, doesn't matter. You can improve a lot. I mean, if you're taking the LSAT in 4 months, if you're taking it in, say, September, you've got plenty of time to improve your LSAT score significantly from wherever you're at. The question is ultimately, again, how much are you going to study and what is the way in which you're going to study. If you're self-studying with books or fake practice questions, it's going to be harder. If you take a course or you get some coaching, you can get some personal feedback on what you're getting wrong and why you're getting it wrong. Then it might help you study more effectively and help you increase your score faster. And I personally can attest to the benefits of the coaching and the feedback. And so I want to offer that to all of you. If you're just joining live, if you haven't already heard, I'm offering a free LSAT tutoring lesson for everybody watching this now or later. You can book that free LSAT tutoring with me personally at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. That's an open offer for everybody watching this now and later. I'm also offering a free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. I just put the link in the chat. And on TikTok, it's at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. It's pinned in my bio, in the link in my bio. It's below the video on YouTube as well. Covers everything in logical reasoning and reading comp, everything I wish I knew back when I was personally studying for the LSAT. So I want to share it with all of you. Totally free. I don't see a reason to charge for a PDF that I can just give away. So I'm giving it away. Happy to help you out with your prep and support you all. And for those just joining live, if you find this helpful, please do me a favor. I don't do any advertising for these lives, and the algorithm doesn't really boost them because I'm not dancing or doing anything crazy. And the LSAT's kind of a niche topic, but I do appreciate your support. If you could spread the word, share this to your socials, share it to your TikTok feed, share this in any group chats or Facebook groups or Discords that you're part of. The more this grows, the more I'll expand it over time. For those who aren't aware, I'm actually in the process of recording free explanations for every single reading comp passage ever released. There are about 400 of them. I'm roughly a third of the way through. And so you can find those on the live tab of the YouTube channel as well. Linked in my bio. Everything I've been talking about, it's all linked to my bio on TikTok and Instagram and below the video on YouTube as well in the description. Nate is asking, what do you recommend for studying? Do you do study plans with a tutor? Any advice? So yes, so we do all of the above. And so for studying, we create for you a personalized LSAT study plan, laying out exactly what to do every single day from now till your test. That covers when to drill LSAT questions by type, when to do timed sections, when to take full-length practice tests as test day approaches. We customize the plan based on your current starting point, your goal LSAT score, and your time frame. And then we look at what else you have going on, if you're working, if you're in school, if you have family obligations, and then you're meeting with a tutor on a consistent basis, typically once a week just for consistency. But if you're taking the LSAT in a year, maybe it'll be every other week. If you're taking it in 6 weeks, like those of us who are taking it in June, it's going to be more like maybe a couple times a week. We'll adjust the plan to your particulars, and so we could talk through it on the call together. Malik's asking, was at a 153 1.5 weeks ago, now at a 156. Is it possible to score 160 plus by June? Yeah, I mean, definitely. You're looking for 5 points or so in 6 weeks. That's very doable. I mean, the question is, what are you currently doing? And should we change up your approach? Are we in a situation where you've kind of plateaued, or do we have to change the variables to change the equation? I'd have to get more context to see what is exactly the path to get your score up by the 5 points, but I think it should be possible. If you were a student in our programs, I'd say it's definitely doable. If you want to book the free tutoring with me so I can get a bit more context on your situation, then we could talk through it more together. And for those asking, yes, Carl, the cheat sheet document, you can get that in my bio on TikTok and IG. It's below the video on YouTube as well. Frog Guys is asking, do you think starting LSAT study as a first year in college is good? To be frank, it might be premature. I don't know that you need to start studying for the LSAT quite this early. It might be that you should focus on just maintaining a high GPA, and then the LSAT isn't going anywhere, so you could come back to it in a year. But if you have a particularly light course load in college, or your summer is looking pretty open, it might not be a bad idea to knock out the LSAT in the next couple months or next 6 months. Your score is good for 5 years, so you could lock it down and then just rest easy knowing that you've got it secured. It's totally your call. I typically recommend taking the LSAT when you will have the time to study for it adequately without burning yourself out, without burning the candle at both ends, and most importantly, without tanking your GPA. I see Nate saying, I'm at a 147. wanting mid 150s by June, don't feel prepped at all, I have to do something. Yeah, I mean, you definitely do have to do something. Like I said before, you got to change the variables to change the equation. So if you want to get 8 points in 6 weeks and you're not feeling prepared right now, you got to change the change, right? I mean, what are you currently doing? What is missing? Is there a gap in your fundamentals? Is there a gap in your approach? I'd want to talk through this. You should book the call with me if you haven't already, and we'll get down to the bottom of it. But you're not going to get to your goal if you're not feeling prepped. I mean, feeling prepped is necessary to get the score that you want. It's not sufficient, of course, but I'd want you to walk into LSAT test day feeling cool, feeling confident, ready to crush it. And ideally, you've scored at or above your goal score at least 5 practice tests before test day itself, so that test day will feel like just another run through and you've done it all before. That's the place that we've got to get you to. It's possible in 6 weeks, but we've got to look at what are your weak areas. Are there any high yield question types that you have not yet mastered? That if we got you to master those, you'd get a pretty quick score boost. In logical reasoning, for example, there is necessary assumption, inference, and flaw being the most 3 common types of logical reasoning questions. I would always start there before focusing on less common types like parallel reasoning or evaluate the argument. Everybody hates parallel questions, but there are so few of them that your time is better spent focusing on more common types of logical reasoning questions. So think through, what are your gaps? What are the question types giving you the most trouble that also show up relatively more frequently? Book the call with me if you haven't already. Thanks for joining, folks. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you're watching this. I'll see you all then. In the meantime, all the best. Take care. Thanks for joining.